Hello and welcome back. This is the fourth episode of Ghost Creatures and Scares Oh My.
A podcast where we share our love of the show Supernatural and dive into the fascinating and terrifying real life legends behind the ghosts and creatures featured in each episode of Supernatural.
This episode is called Demons and Exorcisms, and we explore the disturbing history of these stories.
So I think we're just going to jump straight in on with this week because we've got quite a lot to get through. It's quite a meaty subject, demons and exorcisms.
Yeah, there's lots there, isn't there?
The is one of them things when you know. I was really happy when this episode came up because I knew there's just so much like stories to cover really. So yeah, every week we work our way through each episode from Supernatural. At the moment, one is Supernatural season one. We'll very quickly recap the episode. So we're no apologies about the spoilers, are we? Because it's very old, and if you haven't seen it, then you know it's not out.
What are you doing with your life?
Yeah, so you know what's coming every week, so it's a good excuse to go and watch it if you haven't already. And we'll basically just react to the stories and the history, the folklore behind each monster or creature that's featured in that episode. So this week we're looking at episode four of season one of Supernatural, and the episode is called Phantom Traveller.
So the synopsis for this episode is, at the beginning of this episode we see a nervous man enter the airport bathroom and try to calm his fears of flying before his flight. However, a strange black cloud possesses him. 40 minutes into the flight, the man manages to open the airplane door, causing the plane to break apart and disaster to strike. Sam and Dean are asked by an old friend of their father's to look into the incident as he doesn't understand how the plane had any mechanical failings. There are seven survivors, including a young man who saw the possessed man from the beginning of the episode, opening the plane door. He tells Sam and Dean that the man had black eyes and was somehow able to open the door mid-flight, which obviously is a lot of pressure on there, so alarm bells ring. The brothers visit the possessed man's home and his wife tells them he's a normal guy who was even scared of flying. Later we see the pilot from the plane that crashed nervously take up his first flight since the crash in a small plane. We see that the same black entity possess the pilot, and 40 minutes again into the flight, he deliberately crashes the plane into a field. They realize the demon is hunting down survivors of the original plane crash, and the brothers board a plane that a stewardess from the flight is working on. She admits to having noticed the man's black eyes, and they work out that the co-pilot of the current flight is now possessed by the demon. They lure him to the rear of the plane and manage to perform an exorcism before tragedy strikes again.
Jeez, take a breath. I've got a massive fear of flying. I know it's quite a common one. Spiders
With the
and
plane going
flying.
down your right.
Yeah, I
It's
mean
probably a
obviously that
common
would
fear.
be it is, but I just think it's because you have got a chance in other kind of scenarios, but if the plane goes down, you haven't really got a chance of survival. So I deliberately veered off the plane kind of scenario and stuck with the theme of demons for this one. I thought it would make sense to do demons and exorcisms at the same time. So in this episode, we're going to look into the mythology surrounding demons and real life accounts of their existence. Demons pop up across many different religions and cultures and do have a strong tie to religion. They are believed to be a malevolent spiritual entity that can cause possession and can warrant exorcisms. Unlike ghostly hauntings, demon related hauntings tend to be more violent and dangerous. Demons have never walked the earth, unlike ghosts, and often seek out the bodies of the living as hosts for their evil deeds. And that kind of reminds me a bit of, well, we're going to like have a little look at demons in pop culture. Insidious, the film franchise,
Fantastic film.
because it's quite a terrifying concept, really, of this little boy who goes in it's like a coma, isn't it?
Hmm.
Because his body's kind of it's an astral projection where he can roam around and on the spiritual plane when his body's still alive, but he's in a coma because his spirit gets stuck.
Hmm.
So you see lots of ghosts trying to get into the body, but it's a demon, isn't it? It's this kind of creepy little red demon guy. That's seen when he's behind the grandma, the
I
mum.
think everybody jumped in the cinema when we seen that.
Yeah, so it is actually more terrifying because if you think about it, demons have never walked the earth. So when you are possessed by a demon, think of these films where it happens. It's so obvious that it's not. I mean, it's a monster coming through,
Hmm.
and I don't think they even survive in a human body. Sometimes the skin ends up coming off, and is that maybe that's just
That's
Hollywood? I mean,
right.
yeah. So different pop culture films. You've got Insidious, I thought, Conjuring. Kind of. The Black Nun, or is she a
No,
ghost?
she's a ghost, I
Is
think, isn't she?
she?
Yeah, I don't think she's a demon.
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure she is. I'm sure I could be wrong here, but I'm sure she presents as a nun, but she wasn't really a nun. Could be wrong, but sometimes that's what they do, don't they? They present in a human form, like the doll Annabelle, but actually
Hmm.
they've never walked the earth.
Well, they normally present as like friendly, don't they? To
Yeah,
lure someone into allowing them
definitely.
into the home.
I mean, you've got the film I've put down here, Poltergeist, kind of. That's more of a poltergeist, but they're definitely demonic. Well, that's a strong start.
Poltergeist, the film. Yes, I would say it's
Yeah,
Poltergeist.
yeah, but it is Amityville as well as demonic presence rather than
Hmm.
just spirits who've actually lived and walked the earth. And then, of course, paranormal activity. That was
That's a
a
demon, yeah.
yeah, I heard it. It's just absolutely terrifying. I think the thing with demons when you can't see
Hilarious
them.
paranormal activity. Just
Yeah, oh yeah,
gets
but
dragged down the
it is.
stairs.
But well, our generation that came out. Was it when we were maybe in year 10 or 11 or something? And it was huge when that came out, and it
It's
was
because when
terrifying.
the first one came out, they said it was there was that website saying it was like real, based off a real
It's
story and
all the
real
hype,
people
isn't
and
it?
stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, well, I think with it was such a low budget that they couldn't really afford to do any like demon, so you didn't see anything. But that
Hmm.
actually worked in the
I
favour
did.
because it's the absence of what you can
I
see.
feel far too many of them go a bit over the top when you come to the end, when
Oh,
you actually see the
100%.
demon and it's just stupid.
There's so many films that are popping into my head where it's a really terrifying film, then you see, well, Insidious. If you didn't see that, I mean, you see him at the end playing like
When he jumps up behind, that's pretty.
that
Like it's a
is,
good
it's a
jump. It's
jump
a jump
scare.
scare.
Yeah,
However, at the end when he's running along the walls and that's not really
it's
scary.
more when he's like doing these little puppets and he's got a piano.
Hmm.
You go, talented demon. So the idea of demons is evident in religions such as Judaism, Hinduism, among others. But today we're going to focus on the presence of demons in Christianity, particularly in the Catholic Church. Demons are often depicted as wicked-looking, ugly creatures with wings, hooves, and forked tongues. They are not human-like in appearance. So gargoyles, that I thought that's an interesting one. Do you know why they have gargoyles on churches and cathedrals?
I don't know.
No, it's to ward off evil spirits. So, you get you see these churches and they've got these really ugly, also, that they do act as a water spout for rain that collects in the gutter, but they actually were there to ward off evil spirits.
All right.
Similar to when people say, you're really good for this, I'm not great. When someone sneezes, you say, bless you.
Mm-hmm.
It's to stop because they believed in,
It's to keep the soul in the body, isn't it?
well, it's to keep the soul in the body, but other people say it's because when you sneeze or you cough, you're opening yourself up to demon possession. So it's
Mhm.
to ward off any spirits who want to take the chance, opportunistic spirits.
People with hay fever absolutely screwed.
Yeah. I thought I'd stick to Christianity and Catholic. I can't say this word. Catholicism. Yes. Because I was brought up Catholic. You were brought up in Catholic schools as well. And when it seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't really. And we kind of were brought up on the New Testament. Jesus loves you. It's all great. But if you actually dive into the Old Testament and some of the teachings from the Bible, it's really disturbing. And I suppose if you believe in God and angels, then you kind of have to believe in the devil and demons. It goes hand in hand.
Hmm.
So it's a really big part of the Catholic Church actually. In the Bible, demons are the cause of misery on earth and are the underlings of the devil himself. They can cause possession in humans and animals, and this requires a ritual called exorcism, which can only be performed by a Catholic priest. These exorcisms have to be referred to the Pope to be sanctioned, and if believed to be a credible case of actual demonic possession, a priest will exorcise the demon from the host and back to hell by performing certain prayers, oaths, and certain specific sacraments. That was like a tongue twister for me. A bit of a lisp. Exorcisms have been present in cultures worldwide for millennia, but became commonplace in the Catholic faith in the 1500s. So it's not often. It happens very rarely. But if it has to be a really credible case, they won't just send out a priest willy nilly to exorcise someone. It's got to be explored, researched, and sent to the Pope
It's in
himself.
loads of films now, isn't it? That they've got to have like
Yeah,
thousands of bits of evidence before the
and I don't think it's
church
just
actually
any
get
priest
involved.
who can do it. It's got to be a priest from the Vatican, I think, who specialises in exorcisms.
Yeah.
I mean, you had people like Ed and Lorraine Warren who did exorcisms, but were they just kind of phonies, really? I don't know. They weren't sanctioned to do it. So when do you think the exorcisms went through the roof?
Well, films were a big take off for them, weren't they? Really?
Yeah, but is there any specific moment in history that you think, yeah, that'll when the church were inundated with requests for exorcisms on people?
Maybe around the time when witches and stuff were starting to become a thing.
Not much closer to us. It was in 1973 when The Exorcist was released, the film.
All right.
So yeah, so when The Exorcist is a 1973 American supernatural horror film written for the screen by William Peter Blatty, based on his 1971 novel of the same name. So basically, in this film, you'll know if you've seen it, a young girl called Reagan becomes possessed by a demon and she deteriorates rapidly. She becomes violent, she's physically harmed as the demon takes over her body. Eventually, the demon is exorcised after a grueling exorcism and the deaths of those sentenced to help her. So this film, it was based on a book and it just sparked absolute mass hysteria. I think it was just the impact on pop culture and society. Just
It had to be the time, didn't it? Because now, like,
yeah.
if you, I've watched it obviously for the first time
Oh, huh.
after that, and it's just really not that scary.
Well, I was going to say this, but The Exorcism, I think we watched that together a few years back, and I don't think I've ever really properly watched The Exorcist. And it can bear in mind back in the day, this was banned in so many countries until the 90s.
Not surprising.
Really?
It's weird.
Oh, yeah, it's very weird, but to be ban a film, it's just I think that's more bizarre because what you do there is if you ban a film, you're creating a hype about it and people want to see it.
Suppose, yeah.
But when we watch it, maybe we're just completely desensitized now because it's ridiculous. It's funny, but I can't imagine someone ever watching that and being scared of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm more scared of ghosts, which is stupid because a demon is more harmful than a ghost, but it would be more ghost films that get me. But I don't know. But in the day, this was absolutely terrifying. I mean, The Exorcist was released in 24 theatres in the United States and Canada in late December, and audiences flocked to see it because there'd been this massive hype and media presence around it. That whole thing where people were saying, oh, people fainted and died, and the lines got so long that people ended up waiting for 7 hours just to buy a ticket. Theatre owners found themselves hiring security guards and adding extra staff to handle the huge and hysterical audiences. There were reports of people literally throwing up in the aisles and smelling salt were used to revive some moviegoers. Papers were reporting of people falling victim to heart attacks and miscarriages during showings, and a psychiatric journal carried a paper on cinematic neurosis triggered by the film. I mean,
People are clearly over the top if that was
that wouldn't
actually
happen
happening.
around here, would it?
Nah, not at all. Nah. You've got to be like, how?
It's
I mean,
ridiculous.
again, though, for the time, if this was a brand new thing, like
Oh,
nothing really. I
sorry.
can't think of much that was done
Parents were
before.
like up in the 70s, and I couldn't imagine them walking in.
No,
It's just stupid. It's maybe that mass hysteria. We're all going to do a feature episode on mass hysteria, and I find that really interesting. That maybe there's something about this film that in other people that all geared each other, riled each other up to the point where this happened.
it's the media's best way of
Yeah,
getting out to get numbers in for a film. If you just spread something, oh yeah, somebody fainted during the film, then people are going to be like, oh, it must be really bad, and then it
yeah,
spreads, doesn't it? And
that's it.
Chinese sticks Chinese whispers, isn't it? More and more gets added to it.
I think the only thing that we can compare it to, like you were saying before, is Paranormal Activity. That
Hmm.
got a little bit of hype because I remember when that came out, maybe 10 or more years ago, it was things like, oh, people were sick in the cinema and people actually fainted and one person had a
Yeah, well, the
seizure or
fact that we're saying that
something.
was based off a true story and stuff like that's a great way of hyping up the film and
It
driving up
wasn't, was it?
numbers. No.
No, it wasn't. So it's
Yes.
real. Right, okay. So we're going to launch into a couple of different stories. One of them, towards the end, that you'll have definitely heard of. This one, you probably heard of this one as well, maybe not. But if you've ever seen a film called The Exorcism of Emily Rose, then this is the real story that it was based on. So I took this story from allthat'sinteresting.com, and it's a story of Annalise Michelle. Perhaps one of the most terrifying exorcism cases in history, Annalise's story went on to inspire the 2005 film The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Annalise, a young German woman, had struggled from an early age with mental illness. In West Bavaria, Germany, in the 1960s, Annalise was very religious and attended church often. One of the first unusual incidents occurred when she was 16 years old and had suddenly blacked out, walking around in a daze. She claimed to have remembered nothing about the incident, and after the second time, Annalise visited a neurologist who diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a disorder that causes seizures, loss of memory, and experiences of visual and auditory hallucinations. Auditory, I thought that sounded weird, hallucinations. Temporal lobe epilepsy can also cause Geschwin syndrome, a disorder marked by hyper-religiosity. She was given meds to help her when at college, but then she started to believe that she was possessed by a demon and needed to find help that wasn't medicine. She began to see the face of the devil wherever she went and said she heard demons whispering in her ears. When she heard demons telling her that she was damned and would rot in hell while she was praying, she concluded that the devil must be possessing her. Annalise sought out priests to help her with her demonic possession, but all of the clergy she approached rejected her requests, saying that she should seek medical help and that actually they needed the permission of a bishop anyway. At this point, Annalise's delusions had become extreme. Believing that she was possessed, she ripped the clothes off her body, compulsively performed up to 400 squats a day, crawled under a table, and barked like a dog for 2 days. Stop laughing. It's a hell of a workout.
His legs must have been massive.
She also ate spiders and coal, bit the head off a dead bird, very Ozzy Osbourne, and licked her own urine from the floor. Finally, sounds like Milo to be fair. For a minute anyway. That's a little dog. Finally, she and her mother found a priest, Ernst Alt, who believed in her possession. He stated that she didn't look like an epileptic. In later court documents, he also petitioned the local bishop, Bishop Joseph Stangl, who eventually approved the request and granted a local priest, Arnold Renz. These names are really in the words. I'm struggling here. God. So he granted a local priest, Arnold, to perform a secret exorcism. It had to be carried out in complete secret because it didn't really have the proper permissions. Over the next 10 months, following the bishop's approval of Annalise's exorcism, the two priests conducted 67 exorcisms, lasting up to 4 hours on the poor young woman. And through these sessions, Annalise revealed that she believed she was possessed by 6 demons: Lucifer, Cain, Judas, Iscariot, Adolf Hitler, Nero, and Fleischmann, who was a disgraced priest. She broke the bones and ripped the tendons in her knees from continually kneeling in prayer. And after her death, Annalise's story became a national sensation in Germany after her parents and the 2 priests who conducted the exorcisms were charged with negligent homicide. They came before the court and even used a recording of the exorcism to try and actually justify their actions. The 2 priests were found guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence and were sentenced to 6 months in jail, which was later suspended, and 3 years of probation. The parents were made exempt from any punishment as apparently they'd suffered enough, and that was a criteria for sentencing in German law. Over these 10 months, Annalise was frequently restrained so the priest could conduct exorcism rites. She slowly stopped eating and she eventually died of malnutrition and dehydration on July the 1st, 1976. So I feel like there's a lot to unpick from that story.
Ah, they're
A lot of
ridiculously long words. Probably done like pretty good job in there.
like need a lighter. Best person out loud, and that was quite challenging. So what
I
do you
think
think
some of the words were scarier than the actual story.
what do you think of it? What do you think of that story?
It's I mean, haven't seen the film. I don't know. It's well, obviously they've got quite a compelling case, isn't it? Like it's there's a lot going on in it. I mean, the fact that she was possessed by Hitler, I don't know whether I agree with that. And but yeah, I don't know.
I
It's
feel
an odd
like
one, isn't
that's
it?
just sensationalism, isn't it? They're never possessed by just random people that you've never heard of who happen to be evil.
Hmm.
It's always these
The
that
Biggins, Lucifer.
the big guys, yeah. I mean Nero, that's just what like I don't know. I think to me this story could be believable, but everything to me points at mental illness,
Hmm.
which really, when you unpick it all, is really sad and tragic when you think because I'm by no means am I an expert on this subject, so apologies if I get anything wrong, but I do believe that schizophrenia can present in people under 30 more often. This is when it tends to come out between the ages of 19 and 30 is when more schizophrenia will come out in people. It's quite rare to happen after that, I believe. So, the fact that she had a syndrome, I'll try and say it again, Gershwin syndrome, and that actually makes you really religious and over the top. It all seems a little bit tied together to point towards mental illness here.
Loads of films use this now, though, don't they? Where they're just like, we'll be seeing this, and imagine if she actually was possessed,
Yeah,
and like we're just part of the crowd going, nah,
yeah.
nah, she's just nuts.
I know the thing is though, I mean, she had epilepsy, she had this disorder that made her hyper religious. She clearly had it seemed to start, when she was 16,
Hmm.
which would make sense that mental illness, would start to develop then. I feel like she's zoned in because she's religious. She's zoned in on the exorcism route. If she wasn't religious, it could have just been. It might have been spotted quicker
Hmm.
because the people around her, her parents, obviously they would have been very religious, and she's got priests. They've all. I think they deserve to all be put in prison because they've failed her massively, like a minor, really, when you think
Yeah,
about
definitely.
it.
I mean, if she was, I mean, the likelihood is she was definitely just, um,
I mean,
mentally
performing
challenged.
400 squats a day. That is insane. I can actually feel my legs hurting just from reading that one. Like that's just crazy. But so that really sad story. I'm not even going to ask if I've convinced you because I feel that one is just it's very clearly it's been sensationalized by Hollywood in the film, but that is definitely
Mental illness, yeah,
mental illness. Gosh, got
definitely.
my teeth in today. So the next one is Roland Doe, which is a bit more maybe harder to prove or disprove even. So Roland Doe is a pseudonym. It's not his real name his actual identity was never made public. So he also can be known by Robbie Mannheim, again, not his name, another alias. And they had the similar experience with possession. So Doe's case became so notorious that it's actually the inspiration of the exorcism. That is actually the inspiration behind Reagan. This pretty much happened to him.
Hmm.
So after the passing of his aunt, the 13-year-old boy turned to a spirit board a Ouija board to commune with his beloved family member. Instead of inviting his aunt, Roland apparently invited something much more sinister. After the family became overwhelmed by weird occurrences, including odd noises, furniture moving by itself, and objects levitating when Roland was around, they reached out to their Lutheran pastor, who, after monitoring Roland's behaviour, declared that he should actually see a Catholic priest. And he did. During the resulting exorcism, the boy slashed the Catholic priest's arm with a bed spring, temporarily putting an end to any further action. The family then moved to St. Louis and saw three more priests, who, with the permission of an archbishop, carried out around 30 exorcisms on Roland in the psychiatric wing of a city hospital. Messages written on his skin, guttural voices, and extreme strength were noted in one priest's diary before the young boy was eventually freed of the malicious spirit, with no memory of the incident having taken place. However, there was an author called Mark Obspinick. These names, why can't you just be called John Smith? Was Obstinate questioned many of the supernatural claims associated with this story, proposing that Roland Doe was simply a spoiled, disturbed bully who threw deliberate tantrums to get the attention of his parents and friends and to get out of school. This author, sorry, reported that Halloran, who was present at the exorcism, never heard the boy's voice change. I think Halloran, they didn't really explain that well. He's one of the priests.
Hmm.
So apparently, this author said that this priest who was present at the exorcism never actually heard the boy's voice change, and he thought the boy was merely mimicking Latin that he heard the priest say rather than actually suddenly being able to speak Latin. He was just taking snapshots of the words that he heard them speak. He reported that when marks were found on the boy's body, the priest failed to check the boy's fingernails to see if he'd actually made the marks himself. And he also questioned the story of the attempts to exorcise the boy and his subsequent injury, saying he could find no evidence that such an episode had actually occurred. According to this author, individuals connected to the incident were influenced by their own convictions, which I would agree with. I feel like a lot of these priests in these families, they're very much influenced by religion anyway, that they get carried away with it, maybe.
Yes.
To psychiatrist, Rob Dawes suffered from mental illness, it was quite clear. But to the priest, this was a case of demonic possession. To writers and film video producers, this was a great story to exploit for profit. Those involved saw what they wanted to see, and actually that they manipulated the facts and emphasised information that fit with their own agendas. The author wrote that after he located and spoke with neighbours and childhood friends of the boy, he concluded that the boy had been a very clever trickster who had pulled pranks to frighten his mother and to fool children in the neighbourhood. So, a different kind of angle on this one. What do you make of that story?
I mean, if it's true and the boy was just a trickster, he's some trickster.
Yeah, I mean, to have, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, when in school, if the priest came in, it was kind of that authority, like to imagine it, to stab a priest with a bed spring, if you're a religious person anyway,
Just out chucking a tantrum.
that is
It's
very, very, daring to do if it is a prank.
went for it. Had to
Yeah,
commit, didn't he, when he was
you had
that
to
far in?
commit. Yeah, I think it's not. It sounds like this person, this Roland Doe, his identity's hidden. I don't think he suffered. he obviously did suffer, but I'll be careful how I say this. It sounds unlike Annalise. This kind of was suffering of his own making, I think. Whereas she clearly had very terrible mental illness that was unrecognised.
Just sounds a bit like Naughty Child, really,
Yeah,
more so than anything else. Like he's just wanted, I don't know, maybe a bit of attention or
you
something,
don't know
and
what's going on. Yeah,
he's just went off. I mean, could be completely wrong, and he
it
might have
could be
actually been
true.
possessed, but this one
Mhm.
sounds a lot more that he's just been chucking a tantrum a bit
In there,
and
yeah,
committed to it.
he's really committed to it, and he's zoned in on the fact that everything he knows from church, he's taken all them. The fact that he wants people were like, oh, he's speaking Latin. Well, how would he know how to do that? He's literally just mimicking what the priests are saying,
Hmm.
and his parents would have been. He knows how to manipulate people, I think, and they're just as bad, really, because this author, this guy's saying all the people involved, they had their own agendas. They want people back in church. If you think about, I always think about this, church people, they're not as full as they used to be at one time. So this is a great way to get people back to the faith. If there's evil, come back to church and we'll protect you, kind of thing. Maybe, do you
Hmm.
think?
Maybe
Yeah. So I think this is more. Then again, is it more believable than Annalise? I think actually less so.
less so than Annalise. I
Yeah.
think. I think she's mental illness, whereas this is just he just went nuts, hasn't he?
Yeah. So we've got two more stories. This one's a little bit shorter. Then we'll finish with one that is I think is really compelling. This one is veering on the side of serial killer. We've just watched, haven't we, the Jeffrey Dahmer series on Netflix, which is brilliant.
Really good.
Really terrifying though, and I think it's bringing these serial killers of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s from tend to be American. I mean, we've had our own fair share of serial killers as well, but it's bringing them back into the what's the word, into the light,
Forefront.
the forefront. Yeah, I couldn't think of that word.
Evan Peters did a class
Oh,
job,
I
didn't
love
he?
Evan
But
Peters.
maybe a bit too good.
Oh, don't say that. He's just a great actor. Don't ruin Evan Peters because he's brilliant. I mean, I'm not being funny. I think what really annoys me with this whole Evan Peters thing is people saying, "Oh, he's going to be really traumatized after playing this role." They've clearly never seen American Horror Story because some of the roles he's played in American Horror
He's
Story,
just used to it now, isn't he?
it's the far. I mean, maybe they're not as worse bad because they're a bit more dramatic, but
He
I'm
was definitely the
sorry.
best for me as Quicksilver, though, from X-Men.
Oh, see, I think that doesn't do anything for me.
That was brilliant.
I'm not at all into superheroes or anything. So, have you heard of the Son of Sam?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, also known as David Berkowitz. He's one of America's most notorious serial killers, and he claimed to have been possessed during his spree, blaming demons for the murder of six New York City residents. In the year between 1976 and 1977, Berkowitz would terrorize the residents of the city's five boroughs, murdering six and wounding seven, a violent spree he attributed to Papa Sam, a mysterious evil figure that Berkowitz referenced in the letters he left at his crime scenes. A bit like the Zodiac killer there, then he left letters.
Hmm.
Sometimes I think these people want to be caught when they start leaving letters. After his capture, it was revealed that Sam was the dog of his neighbour, Sam Carr. Berkowitz even claimed in his prison diaries that the animal was possessed by a 6,000-year-old man named Sam, an alcoholic who consumed human blood. He also claimed that the spirit locked him in the attic and commanded him to kill through the dog. The dog told me to kill, as he usually does, David wrote in his diaries before revealing concern that he may one day evolve into a humanoid or demon in a more complete state. Although Bergowitz has gone back and forth, sometimes sticking with the possession story, sometimes recanting it, to this day he believes that his crimes were part of an epic struggle between God and the devil. I thought that was an interesting one to put in there.
Yeah.
It's just crazy that, isn't it?
He's just a
That's
serial killer, isn't
who
he?
wants to
Who wants to kill
kill.
and want
Yeah.
reason for it. He might have been trying to go down the crazy route as well.
And here's my question. I can make a fool of myself here. A 6,000-year-old man who's an alcoholic, they didn't have alcohol 6,000 years ago. Certainly not. Or did they?
I've got no idea, to be
They
fair.
might have to be like fermented something. But
Fermented
an
grapes, isn't it?
alcoholic who consumed human blood. That's something like a child would come up with. Yeah, he was an alcoholic
The
and he
dog
drank
told
human
us.
blood.
It was just like instead of the dog told us, like the dog ate me homework. I think, nah, the dog told us to kill him.
The dog. The dog ate my homework. The dog did it. What a poor dog.
Aye.
He's just minding his own business. The thing is, though, we'll laugh, but if that was 300 years earlier, that dog would have been burnt at the stake for being a witch.
Aye, probably,
He
yeah.
was barking. Can't imagine someone blaming Milo. I believe it, to be
Yeah, I
fair.
was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to finish off there with the Sally House. Have you heard of the Sally House?
I don't think so.
You have. And you're going to say that you might remember it when I go through it, but think of our boys, Shane and Ryan,
All right, right.
from
Oh
BuzzFeed.
yeah, I do remember it. Yeah.
So the Sally House is a really famous um house that's linked in America. It's linked to demonic possession. And out of all the stories today, I think out of all the stories, usually I really try my best to try and persuade you don't and that things are real. I don't think I've done a great job so far, but it is because it is ridiculous, in my opinion, demonic possession. However, there's very little evidence to suggest that this was made up, so we'll launch into it. So, built in the mid 1800s, the Sally House is said to be the most haunted home in Kansas. Located at number 508 North 2nd Street, this unassuming, almost picturesque house is said to be the home of a vengeful spirit, or in fact something far, far darker. Sometime just after the year 1900, a frantic mother carried her young daughter to the door of the infamous property, which was then merely home to the local surgeon. The young girl, called Sally, was suspected to have a ruptured appendix, and the surgeon rushed her to the basement where he carried out his operations. Tragically, the anaesthesia hadn't fully worked its way through the poor girl's convulsing body, and in the midst of agony and terror, she passed away. The violent nature of her death was said to have caused her spirit to remain trapped in the house, tormenting those who would move in and out of the home. The hauntings include pictures being turned upside down, floating objects, disembodied voices, apparitions, toys being thrown around one of the bedrooms, doors opening, closing, locking and unlocking randomly. The spirit can also cause physical harm, burn marks and scratches, and Sally seems to target old men in particular, perhaps in revenge of the doctor who caused her pain and was unable to save her life. So that's the backstory. Then we've got a real life, bit like Amityville, like a family moved in.
Mhm.
So in December 1992, oh, the year we were born, yeah, so I'd have been nearly one. Good maths,
Um,
it. You would have been
about 6 months.
6 months. In December 1992, Tony and Debbie Pickman, newlywed and expecting their first child, moved into the Sally house. The house had long been known to be haunted, and it's unclear if the Pickmans knew the history of the home before they moved in. At first, minor things happened. Lights flickered, the dogs acted strangely, and there fell cold spots around the house. All things that could be chalked up to normal, drafty old house activity. But within a few months, things became so odd. Mold started growing on objects in the house. The light in the nursery would turn itself back on and stay on all night. And then the weirdest thing happened. The Pickmans went out one evening, and when they returned, Debbie Pickman found all of the stuffed animals in the nursery had been moved to the floor and placed in a circle, sitting up, facing each other with their paws touching.
Toy Story.
That's Woody, blame Woody and Buzz.
They're just having a tea party and they came back early.
One particularly haunted evening, the Pickmans decided that they didn't want to stay in the house that night or any longer. As they were leaving, Tony Pickman felt something burning him on his back. Later, the Pickmans saw that he had three long scratches in the place where he'd felt the burn. Tony continued to take the brunt of the physical attacks, and 2 years after they moved in, the Pickmans left the house for good. Today, the house is open for self-guided tours and even overnight stays. All visitors are required to sign a waiver before entering because of the potential of personal injury. However, some people believe that the story of Sally House is just circumstantial and that it's actually due to the prevalence of violent supernatural attacks on people, is in fact a demon who haunts the home. In the sixth episode of their 10th season, Zach, Aaron, and Nick from the Travel Channel's popular paranormal series Ghost Adventures investigated the Sally House with former owners Tony and Deborah Pickman. Just to put in there, Ghost Adventures is an American show. I think it's very similar to where we have Most Haunted.
Hmm.
So Zach Bagans, he's really famous. He's probably the equivalent of Derek Acora. I love Derek Acora, R.I.P. Some of the strange occurrences that took place during this investigation included Tony Pickman suffering welts on his neck from an unknown source, and another guest being scratched on the arm. A guest psychic nearly fainted, shock, trauma, and the words scratch, Satan, pain, kept spirit. What? Sorry, I should have read this. The words scratch, Satan, pain, kept spirit are all separate. I was going to say that doesn't make sense as a sentence. These words were caught on the Puck device and a teddy bear rolling on its own. So when we watch there's a really good series, BuzzFeed Supernatural, with Shane and
Shane and
Ryan.
Ryan,
Yeah, and they've got this little device that can allegedly pick up ghost speaking. So these words like scratch,
spirit
seed,
box,
and
isn't it?
paint.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, that's the spirit box. So when they did it, can you remember this is the house where the torch kept turning on and off?
Yeah,
It's just like a normal little. It doesn't look creepy at all. But what do you think? Have I convinced you with that one a bit more
I
than the
think
others?
that one's a lot better than the other stories. I feel like they can be a lot better when it's them sort of just saying that they've never actually seen what it is, but
Hmm.
stuff's just happening
Yeah.
every time. But then again, at the same time, they might just be trying to get more people into the house.
But the thing with that one is, I mean, yeah, they were involved in this Ghost Adventures program, but they left the house. It was, I mean, I could be wrong here, unless they kept ownership of the house, and they're the ones who wavered out for tours and things. But they've moved out of the house.
Mm,
It's not like they've stayed there and said, "Come and see our," you know what I mean?
yeah,
It could have been for attention,
well,
but
it's definitely the best story
yeah,
of the ones because well, it's probably the most believable.
and they were a normal couple. I
Hmm.
mean, what's normal? But you know what I mean. They were newlywed, a baby on the way. That was us this time last year, really, wasn't it? And this would be the last thing on my mind if I'm pregnant.
Yeah,
You
that is
know,
true.
if anything, it's the worst thing that could happen. Such a happy time. And the thing that made it a little bit more believable for me was I don't know if you caught on to the bit where the husband, sorry, he was scratched 3 times. Well, demons tend to do things in threes. Do you know why?
I don't because you've just covered the answer.
No cheating. It's to mock the Holy Trinity.
Oh yeah.
So it's to make fun of, the Holy Trinity and the idea of God itself. It's the devil's way of getting back at his old foe. And also that happens in going right back to the start, Supernatural episode, if you notice. It's 40 minutes into the flight when the flight goes down. Well, that's in reference to Jesus' 40 days and 40 nights. Demons love to make fun and mock God.
Hmm.
So that's kind of, like for example, they say the witching hour,
Yeah.
and if you wake up middle of the night and you think it's like you've got a weird, it tends to be 3 o'clock, and things 3 knocks, it's all making fun of God. So that kind of made it a little bit more believable for me. I would love to have seen Derek Cora there. I think he would have
Oh,
been,
I'm sure he would
been
have
off the
embellished.
chart.
Yeah.
What was his spirit guide's name?
Was it not like
Sam.
Sam? Yeah.
Sort of Sam. was
Was the dog?
it was the dog. Yeah, we should have known. Oh God, I'm gonna watch Derek Cora this afternoon. So that's all the stories I've got for today. I hope you've enjoyed them. I think I've managed to convince you a little bit with the last one.
The last one was definitely the best.
Yeah, I'm really excited for next week. That next week we're looking at the legend of Bloody Mary and haunted mirrors and possessed mirrors, and I've got some, I think, quite terrifying stories for that. So hope you've liked today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Ghosts, Creatures and Scares Oh My.
Please make sure to leave us a review and let us know what you thought of today's episode. Feedback will really help us out, and we really want to know your thoughts to help us hone our podcast.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook if you haven't already, and you can email us at ghostcreaturesandscares@gmail.com. If you've got any supernatural stories that you'd like to share, or just if you want to get in touch and let us know something that we can do better, or that you liked, or that you didn't like. Have enjoyed today's episode and past episodes, tell your friends about us. So, thank you so much again. We're going to be back next week to discuss the unsettling legend of Bloody Mary and possessed mirrors.
Have a great week.